Welcome to episode 89 of the XrmToolcast. In this episode, Jonas is back as a co-host, and we have three guests this time: Matt Beard, Chris Piasecki, and Mark Carrington, all MVPs, and all here to talk about tips and tricks, actually mostly just basics, the basics of the XrmToolBox. And as we go through this, multiple people mentioned, multiple us MVPs that are doing it mentioned, oh, I didn't even know it could do that. And we even discovered a new feature in the XrmToolBox that we didn't know was there, that not even everybody had. It was in Matt's version of the XrmToolBox, not mine, because I needed to update. So anyway, this is an episode for anybody that's never heard of it, anybody that's used it for a little bit, used the XrmToolBox for a little bit, and for people that have been using the XrmToolBox since day one, you'll get something out of it, and it's just the very basics. So sit back, relax, and let's get started. Hello and welcome to another episode of the XrmToolcast. With me, your host, Daryl, always raising the bar, and my back with us again co-host, Jonas. My brain dump is not my shirt wrap. Jonas, how you doing?
Yes. Who? Why? Are you? Oh, you're Daryl. Yeah.
Yes.
It's great to be here again, and I'm actually a host or co-host or something. Yeah. That's crazy. Co-host. So we'll see how it's done.
Yes, we'll see. Yeah. You do have the correct shirt on today. Our listeners won't know, but
yes.
Jonas has his blue screen of death, but it's like the blue screen of death for your brain shirt. Like how do you describe that shirt?
Well, it's me. That's it. My brain was broken, and then I relax and trying to restart, and maybe after reboot it will be fine.
Maybe after reboot it will be fine. Awesome. Well,
I have to laugh at myself.
Yes. Yeah. We all do, and yeah, it's great that you're able to do that as well. So, I was gonna have Scott in here, but he had some meeting or something he had to do. So now I got Jonas back. This is best.
Mm-hmm.
Who could complain? Go from one great MVP to another, and now we actually have, this is the first time I think we've had three guests on the show. So our guests today are going to talk about the basics. So this is great for you, Jonas, just to get you back into it. We're just the basics of the XrmToolBox.
That's my area.
Yes, it is. So our guests today, in no particular order, Mark Carrington, Chief Technologist at Data 8 Limited, Ltd. Yeah. Microsoft BizApps FFP, and Dad and Big Kid, as well as Matt Beard, who was the one that approached me about this topic. So Matt, thank you very much for doing so. But two-time Microsoft BizApps MVP, Scottish Summit and D365 PPUG UK organizer, husband to an awesome wife, dad to two beautiful girls, and a crazy dog. And then finally, Chris Piasecki. How do I pronounce your name, Chris? You're on mute too. Piasecki. Okay. Microsoft MVP, senior consultant at CGI, and Power Platform architect. There we go. I've never had to introduce so many guests before, but we've done it. We've gotten through it, and now we can actually get on to the stuff people care about, which is the basics, right? The basics. So, Matt, why don't you go ahead and kind of describe what caused this reminder? Hey, maybe we need to get back to the basics here.
The three of us were housemates. We went to the EPC in Orlando, the Power Platform Conference, the first ever Microsoft Power Platform Conference. Mm-hmm. And one of the things that the organisers did was, alongside the main tracks, you could organise meetups, so just community meetups around any sort of topic. And I think Mark put to me, and then into the wider world, would there be any interest in us running a community session around XrmToolBox? Inspired by something that Jonas had a discussion about with an audience in Scotland, was it? Wherever your discussion was. So, yeah, and then we sort of snowballed into this thing, and then we ended up sitting around the table in a very unstructured format with 10 people, maybe. It's one of them round table of similar things to talk about, and where does the conversation actually flow? And very quickly, actually, even though it was an XrmToolBox discussion, it became apparent that it wasn't going as deep as the tools themselves. It was the actual platform itself, and the things that people don't realise and take for granted, the things that we use every day take for granted. And I figured if there was a round table of 10 people that didn't know these things, then there's going to be a whole whack more that don't either. So it's a worthwhile topic of discussion that we might have between us.
So it's the whole idea of start with the end in mind, but start at the beginning, sort of thing, right?
Mm-hmm.
Okay, cool. So who wants to share maybe like the first tip or the first thing that we need to make sure we know? I don't know if you guys have this organized or what, but who wants to chime in first?
Well, I want to, but I can't. You're the guests, of course. You start. I have so many tips.
Jonas is going to make sure you guys get everything that's on his list. If you're not, he's going to add. I'll shut up. Someone.
Too much pressure now. I'll go first. So first one we had, I think, was connection lists. So I have a feeling probably 90-something%, I would say, of people that use XrmToolBox, I'm going to make up a number there, create a connection, and then they probably create another connection to their sandbox, and another one to their prod, and one to their UAT system, and it just kind of grows over time. And you just got the default connection list with 20, 30 odd connections in there. And yeah, maybe you move to another PC and you got to set it all up again. Without realizing that at the top of that connection dialog, where it says default connection list, that's actually a drop-down list, and you can create some more lists in there. So maybe you could have one for if you work as a consultant with different customers, you could have a list for each customer, or you could have a list for your sandbox environments and one for your prod environments, or however you want to break it up. But something there to keep it structured. And when you create a new connection list file, you get to choose where that's stored. So storing that in your OneDrive folder. So when you move from your laptop to your desktop to a new laptop, because you get a new shiny one, then it's still there and synchronized, and you can just go and pick that up. And yeah, just that very first bit you do when you first go into XrmToolBox, which is connect. That make that much easier to go and pick the right thing and find it.
So you called out a couple things there. So first, it's the organization of things. Just make things easier to organize. And if you're a consultant and you've got clients, like that's huge. If you like to play around with personal stuff, maybe you have personal settings and then your company settings. Usually, I would guess most people don't have a whole lot of environments if they are just that one company. So if you have 4 or 6, that's not too big of a deal. But once you get into, I've got personal, I've got non-personal, or I've got especially as consultants, I've got these 6 different clients, and this one I worked on for a day, but I may work on it tomorrow. Like, you don't want to clutter that up. So that's huge. It's just organization. And the second key thing is the backup and restore sort of, or backup and reuse sort of thing. So when you go from one computer to another computer, if you've backed that file up and you load it from that backup, now you're right back where you were, and you don't have to go through and re-enter in your 15 or 20 or just 2. I mean, 2 is enough connections.
Then take that to the next level and say, well, how do you share those between people? If you onboard a new consultant, how do they connect into all your different environments? So if that file is stored and ultimately shared on SharePoint or something, and a file that's synced around from there, and your connections are all set up using application users or something like that, then suddenly everyone on your team has got the same connection to reuse everywhere, rather than everyone having to set up their own. And if you add a new one in, then it instantly becomes visible to everyone else. So, again, work in that sort of team environment makes that a lot easier too.
I think many people are just connecting from the low left sort of button there. I'm never using that, but you have it there. Can you sort of sort where your connections should be stored and in which files and so, but you can't do it from that way? Or well, how do you do it? Do you always use the button on the top left, or to have the connect button?
Now I'm a little bit different here. So rather than adding connections in manually, because we've got so many at DataRate with all our different clients, we actually do something a little bit different. So clients actually register their own connections to our website. And that auto generates a file that we connect to through XrmToolBox. So we never actually really go in and create our own. So yeah, we're kind of taking it to a bit of another level there.
You make other people do your dirty work. I love that. That's a good idea.
Okay, but no, I didn't ask for how you do it, but I mean for general people, how should you do to sort of work with the files where you're storing the connections and so on?
So I would store the files, I think, I'd say in OneDrive would be a good starting point. Just wherever your My Documents folder, as long as it's synchronized to OneDrive, I think is a very good start.
Mm.
Yeah. And Jonas called out a big difference, which is always funny between him and I, because as similar as we've seen at some points, I'm always amazed how different we are. Like, I think you said you always use the connect button, and I never use the connect button unless I'm having to actually create a new connection. I'm always using the thing at the bottom. So it's, again, funny how we just seem to be different.
Actually, usually I don't use any button, not the low left or the top left, because you just click on the tool and then it asks for a connect, and then you get I want to connect. That's the way I do it, unless you have to create a new connection and so on.
Yeah. So I have a confession to make. That I've just switched you to another screen and opened XrmToolBox, and I did not know that was a button in the bottom left of the tool. So there you go.
The person that says, "Hey, these people are missing everything," is learning something already. This is awesome.
Yeah. Yeah.
Yeah. So the other thing that I do sometimes is, you have the most recently used tool list, and then that can save with a connection. And so I will open up a tool that's not even the tool that I want, just so it automatically picks that selection sometimes, and then open up the tool that I want after that. So
yeah,
sometimes I do that as well. So I guess that's the way that I do it. I don't know. So.
Yeah, that start page is. I'm so often using the same tool on the same connection that normally whatever I need is going to be on there.
I feel like we exhausted everything I know about connections and connection lists. Is there something that we're missing on that topic before we move on to the next?
Just a small thing. When you have started to save these connections in specific files, then you can delete the default so that it never just stored in the default when you create a new one. So you have to select one. Otherwise, you just have the default then, and then it will always go there. Then after a year, there's gazillion of the connections in the default anyway. Yep. So delete it.
Delete the default.
Yep.
I've never thought of and so that way, whenever you create a new one, it forces you to create one that's not the default. Okay. All right.
What I love in the an update a few months ago, it had a search bar to that connection list as well, which is fantastic. You just start typing in the name of the connection you want. Much easier than trying to scroll through it.
We'll have to send Tanguy request to give us the path to the file as well, so we can delete it directly from the tool or open it from the tool or something.
Well, that's another thing that a lot of people don't realize is that you can put a URL into that. So if you've got an intranet site that is returning the right set of XML, you can actually not even have a file saved at all, and it's going straight to a web browser. Just to go even more complex.
Why not? Interesting. Okay.
Actually, it's related to connections, but we have to do this with setting files on that one, where it's all like background or a frame of your tools. If you're connected to your dev, it's green. If you're connected to production, then be red, so that you're very scared doing things there.
Yeah.
So,
you don't set it to the environment background outside of production?
Sorry?
Normally, I always set it to the background of the environment and have each background environment theme a different color. And so that way I know, if I have 6 environments or 2 or whatever, I immediately know. And production's always red because that's always scary, right? But so I always set it to the background of the environment.
You can't really ask me because I'm never setting colors on this. So, you guys, how do you do that?
Yeah, definitely. I do this both also for like Daryl mentioned, the theming on the environment itself in CRM. So like development's like green, test environment's another color, and then kind of try to align the same thing in the XrmToolBox connections. Because when you have a million different environments, you're ultimately sometimes going to click the wrong one, and you don't want to go doing some unintended updates in production and realize it after the fact. You're gonna have some unhappy customers.
Sometimes that does get confused for tools that have more than one environment, or are able to switch environments. And Mark, I'm looking at you because the SQL FDS CDS. I don't know if you tested it before or not, but every now and then, like if you connect it, it'll have multiple. You can have as many as you want connected in that one tool. So it kind of breaks the paradigm of the XrmToolBox, because normally you've got like one or like two. I don't think there's like a paradigm for having n number of connections for a single tool that you have open. So yeah, but sometimes I'll change a connection and it'll change the color, even though I didn't actually change the connection sometimes. So, but that's the only tool that I've seen do that. Everything else works great, and so I haven't complained because fix other stuff. It's not that big of a deal. But yeah.
Yeah. So the other bit you can set up when you're, as well as the color, you can also now set up the browser profile, which is fantastic.
Oh, that's great.
So it doesn't work in every tool yet, but I know it works in Fetch XML Builder. I know it works in SQL CDS. I don't know about anything else. But yeah, to be able to click on a link to a record in any of those tools, and it opens up with the right authentication because you've already set up your browser profiles. It's fantastic. Some sort of magic going on behind the scenes there.
You know how many times I wish Teams worked that way, where I can have a link that say open up in this browser. Bugs the crap out of me. So yeah, that's huge.
It's surprisingly all right on phones. Teams doing that. Teams will.
Is it? Oh, you probably don't have different browsers like you do on your machine.
Yeah, on
right?
my phone it'll randomly open me into the right place, but if I use Outlook and Chrome, it just whinges and doesn't do anything at all.
I'm guessing XrmToolBox is not possible to use on a phone, right? Isn't that what we're talking about?
I'm sure one day it will be. Someone's going to do it at some point.
That would be pretty cool. But he was mentioning Teams, the Teams app, Jonas.
Oh, sorry.
Yep.
Yeah.
That is an interesting point you make, though. It's kind of, I think a few of us have been talking around, should XrmToolBox be modernized on something more newer than WinForms, right? And now with .NET MAUI out there, hey, maybe there's a chance.
You can do it.
Yeah.
Yeah. You go for it, Chris.
That wasn't me volunteering.
I wish you luck.
Yeah, we almost had Tanguy on here, but he had his kids apparently on vacation tomorrow, so they're packing up, getting ready to leave. But he did post that he added to the solution layer viewer that you can now view different the XML differences between the different layers now. So that rather than just going, oh, yeah, this layer, you can actually see, oh, this is what's different between this layer and that layer. So I thought that was. He said he did it because he wouldn't be on the show, but I think he just did it because that's what he was doing. But anyway, it was a nice thought.
So, Daryl, I guess you couldn't get Scott, then you want Tanguy, and then have to take Jonas. It's okay.
Yeah,
I got
it's a short list, but you are on it, Jonas.
Yes, that's one of my my top used tools, actually. The solution layer stuff.
Mm-hmm.
Oh, that's probably another tip. Showing your tools by how often
recently used.
Yeah, and then also resizing the size of the bars. That's again something I didn't realize you could do until I think, in fact, Daryl, was it you that tweeted it out and asked for the top 5 tools, or somebody put a tweet out asking for what's your top 5 used tools?
I think I did, or Jonas did, or Scott did, or maybe I retweeted somebody else that did that.
Someone did, and then that led me down the path of, why does everybody's XrmToolBox look a bit smaller and weirder than mine? And now I have small mode and not large mode anymore. So that's the thing.
Has it changed your life?
I mean, not dramatically, but mildly.
Okay.
Yes,
since you're talking about big or small, like for the tools to see the list, we're getting to the settings. I hope someone has that tip, right? Say yes. Yes, thank you. Because I just think it's the smallest thing that I do every time I have to restart it or have installed it again, is change the sorting of the tools from the names to the one I'm using the most will be in the top. That makes it so much easier, because when I'm seeing how people are using the tool or toolbox, you have to find your tool, they start writing the name of the tool instead of just, well, I want to use the one I'm using every day. Then they are in the top, so you will always see them. I think that makes it so much easier. It's a very small thing with a feature, but yeah.
Yeah, I only found that a few weeks ago. But yeah.
A few weeks ago. We've used it for 10 years now.
So you normally sort your tools by most used, or you do what do you sort yours by number?
Yeah,
Now
for me,
by
by those I use the most.
Yeah.
Sorry. Maybe that's what you said also, Mark.
Yeah, but yeah, it's quite hidden away, that little setting. So if you don't know it's there.
That's true. That's true.
I just noticed that there's a hidden tools section in there. I mean, I'm not sure there's stuff I want to hide, but okay, I didn't even know that was an even option. So if there's out-of-the-box tools, like a sample tool with multiple connections, I could just hide those.
Mm-hmm.
Yeah, so go poke around in the configuration settings and just poke around and see what you can find.
Exactly. If there is something to click on, try to click on it. See what happens. Just do it. Why are these settings in there if it's not usable? Well, it is usable to make it to work just for you, what you like the most.
That's how I've learned most things to date. So just clicking on things and see what happens.
Yeah.
All right. What's the next one? Anybody else have another setting or something that we need to talk about?
So one of the things that we ended up talking about quite a lot with the people as well was that the developers of the tools are normal people like us who enjoy doing it and like the feedback and want to make it better, not just for their own tool, but for other people's tools. So we ended up explaining how you can get to people's GitHub pages or reach out to the authors and don't be scared to let them know you've used it or that you think you might have an improvement no matter how slight, or that you found a bug or these sorts of things. And there is a community behind it and these things are used. And it was just a little tip to say that nobody is unapproachable and everybody will take stuff. And if you are a developer, don't feel like you can't work on that repo yourself. And a lot of people didn't realize that there were areas they can get involved with and could go and fix that bug themselves or can offer feedback or anything like that. I think that was a nice little thing that people didn't realize how it was.
Absolutely.
And to be helpful, click on the help menu and click the feedback button, and that'll take you straight to the right place and also give a bunch of information that's helpful to the developers as well. So yeah, if you've hit a bug or want an improvement, then that just puts in all the basic details that the developer's going to need to sort of start having a look at it.
The key part about that, though, Mark, is that they've hit when they're on be on the plugin, be on the tool that you actually want to send the help to, and then go and see if they've implemented the help menu for their particular tool, rather than hitting the help for the toolbox itself. So, not everyone may notice that. Hey, if you have a bug with a tool, you can go to help and feedback for the tool or whatever, and then you don't have to you don't have to bother Tanguy with stuff that isn't his code or feedback for tools.
I think can flip it on the head for the developers slightly as well, to have a look at what interfaces there are that you can put within your tool itself. Mm-hmm. Because you want to make people's life easy to feed it back. There was an interesting point that was brought up. I wonder what you all think of this, actually, because I didn't know what the answer to this was when someone asked me, was that they had a tool they used a lot that the developer hasn't developed in a number of years. And there's been pull requests that are sat there doing nothing. So, and there might not be answer to this, but is there an approach that we should take as developers to try and help out with that? Or what do we think on that? I don't know why I'm asking questions, I'm sorry, I'm turning it around on Daryl and Jonas here, I'm sorry.
So Matt's trying to be number 4 on my list of the people to go to then for co-hosts.
Yep, I've seen that happen, that people are just dropped by the creators. And sometime I finally got a response from the creator, the one who created it. And he said, "Chef, I've been moving on, I'm not working on this anymore. Take the code if you want and improve it and do whatever you want." But or also I've seen this when they say, "Yeah, you can buy the code." No, thanks you. This is like for free. We're doing it for the community. I won't buy your code. But yeah, absolutely. If you can help someone who doesn't work anymore on it, just try to help what you can. Either with that repo, or you take what do you call it? When you take the code to your repository. Thank you. Yes. Maybe it's then afterwards it's published with some other name and so on. So okay, the old one died. The new one will be updated.
Jonas is right that if they aren't accepting anything, you first try to reach out to the person themselves and see if you can get a response on that. And if you don't, then I'd say check the license and see what the license is. And hey, I did everything I could to try to do this. My assumption is you've moved on to something else, and I may fork it and create my own version and see and implement the things that you either don't have the time or the desire to do. I always make all my stuff. I think it's the MIT license, so that way like anybody can grab it and do anything they want to it and sell it and whatever. I don't care. Like I'm not intending to do anything with this outside of use it for my own personal benefit, and hopefully other people can use it as well. So, but yeah, that's the way I would handle that. Anybody else got a better way or a different way?
No.
All right, my way's the right way. Cool. Next.
Yeah, that's generally the way I think we all came with this round table, and it was an interesting split of some devs and some non-devs, and some people willing to get involved and again didn't know how to, didn't know where to start. So I think that was a useful area to show that people can see the code that anybody writes, and actually gives them more confidence that the things they think they can write. So we're not doing amazing stuff in what it is. I know some of the stuff is amazing, but I mean, it's only ultimately using all the platform between everybody else. Which certainly links on to the other thing was I told people to leave feedback. I think reviews are very useful, are very not often done within XrmToolBox. I think reviews are useful for people using the plugin and for the developers.
Yeah, we talked about, or I mentioned how Lynn Zoen, he did that crazy review a tool every single day for like 100 days or something like that.
Yeah, I agree. Crazy.
Incredibly useful though. It's good for someone to actually go in and review them, right? So you know, like almost every tool you kind of find up, you'll see his little review and comment at the bottom. So yeah, shout out to him.
Cool. He'll listen to it because he edits the podcast. Didn't know if you knew that, but he does.
There you go.
So it'd be nice to him if you're making a tool. That's what the takeaway there is, right? Mm-hmm. I remember when he was going through things in alphabetical order, and I was genuinely nervous he was getting near the letter I was at. So I had to make sure the bugs were squashed before he managed to get to it.
Some accountability for you, huh, Matt?
There you go. Yeah, I code best under pressure.
Under a deadline, it's always great to have a deadline, huh?
Exactly.
Any more tips?
What's
the last
next
one I had was the Impersonate option.
Ooh,
So, again, it's sort of a part of the toolbox itself rather than anything that any one tool's got to do. But yeah, if you're building a query and you want to, you can see all this data, but someone says that they can't see a record that they think they should, then you can use that and run the query as them and see what they can see. See if you've messed up your query or they haven't got the right rights or they just can't see something that's right in front of them. But yeah, that makes it nice and easy to use. Yeah, just any tool and see what happens with the rights that somebody else has got. Something that I've seen regularly to say, why isn't it just built into the product? Why can't I just browse CRM as another user if I'm an administrator? Why can't I see what they can see? But yeah, you can with XrmToolBox.
But it's only done within XrmToolBox. Okay, I actually open the environment and get there as someone else. I guess not.
Can you do it with Power Up now? With the correct plugin.
You can do impersonation with the Level Up plugin.
Level Up.
I don't know what. It's all magic to me, so I don't know what it's doing. And one time I managed to get like a browser setting for it cached, and so I couldn't like undo the person I had selected as the impersonated person until I finally like just basically deleted all my browser history settings and cache and cookies and everything. But then it worked. So, but it does work at times in certain situations. But yeah, I've never quite trusted what magic it's doing to get that to work. At least on the impersonate side, that's at least something that we are more comfortable with. At least, in the creating a connection. Hey, I want to do this, and as long as I have impersonate rights, I can go through and do that, and through the platform. That all makes sense to me. But I'm not aware of any of that being in the actual web app, so I don't know how the Level Up tool does that. It's always kind of scary black magic to me. I was really frustrated now that you mentioned impersonate, Mark, because I was attempting to create some records for testing I was actually using your code base for doing the notifications to a Teams bot from like a post in CRM or in Dataverse, and I was needing to create it as somebody else, and so I ended up doing like a code now snippet to like create it and set the created by user, where I could have just did an impersonate and created via your tool. So that would have been a lot easier and safer and less work. So I should have. What was I thinking, Mark?
You needed to watch this.
Yes, I needed to go in the future, watch this, and go back in the past and be smarter. All right, so that was your last one, Mark. Anybody else have one, Chris or Matt?
I think we more or less covered all of the things that you can do, unless there's others I'm unaware of. Like the connections is the big one, right? All the different things that you can do with connections, organization, those very useful features.
That is 90% of the tool, isn't it? Just the connection management and stuff. I'll add one. Sometimes you may get a plugin that's messed up, or you may get a plugin like the early bound generator or something that actually has other things that it's doing besides just working in the tool, like shelling out to something. And so in the settings paths, there is the XrmToolBox folder and storage folder, so you can go and find the plugins or find the config and be able to open up the folder for that a little bit easier, since it is in that app path roaming sort of structure normally. So Jonas gave me a good tip once. Well, he gave me a tip. It wasn't quite as good as I wanted it to be.
Was it good?
Well, so
really,
so you I believe run your XrmToolBox from a OneDrive or Google Drive location, something where it's backed up. The plugins at least are backed up in that location, correct?
Yep.
Yeah. And I've ran into issues where some plugins don't like that. They don't like being like there's some additional security setting that gets added by Windows. I'm using Google Drive for that backup, and it doesn't like it, and it hoses some apps. It caused an issue with the attribute manager or is it early bound generator? One of those. One of my tools, I noticed, this kind of broke it. I added some ugly hack to make it work, but then I ran into similar issues with other people. So now I've gone back to having all my plugins just be local rather than backed up.
That was actually going to be when they take it next level, not just saving the connections files to something on OneDrive or so, but to actually, every time I start XrmToolBox, it has all the files in on OneDrive, instead of being that under like C user Jonas / up blah 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 blah. That's very long, so I can never find it. But if I have it on my OneDrive and I know where it is, then I can actually also, when I switch to a new computer, I use the same one. And it also, I think the most important thing is that it keeps the settings for the XrmToolBox, so it also gets the how many times have I used that tool.
So it gets in the top. Your most recently
so when
used list.
I start from scratch, it knows these are the ones I'm always using. Very important.
There's some things about our lives that we like to keep private, like our credit card number and in the US at least social security number. But
what's private? We always know everything.
Most recently, tools on XrmToolBox. If that can be, if you can automatically just have that sucked in every time you open a new laptop with a new version of XrmToolBox, that's something we're all willing to share and give, isn't it? That's kind of funny. Should be like a feed or a way to actually share that information publicly. That'd be kind of a cool thing to do, to say, hey, these are my top tools or whatever. That'd be interesting. I like that idea. Has anybody else put their plugins or I keep on saying plugins. We changed them to tools back in the day, but has anyone put their XrmToolBox tools in a shared or a backed up file location? And have you had any issues?
No, I just leave them where they normally go.
All right.
Yeah, I leave them where they are because they're going to get outdated so quick too, right? It happens.
Outdated.
Yeah.
Outdated. I mean,
like
you just.
Yeah, I mean, I guess if you always have it stored in a central location, I suppose you'll get the most up to date one. Is like you're updating like XrmToolBox version, but then also like the plugins.
To be honest, the biggest problem I have is that for some reason I'm Mark's SQL CDS beta tester. So he'll quite often remote through the network into my machine and give me a debug version of SQL CDS that I don't know what I'm doing, and then it randomly crashes that I don't know what's going on. So I randomly downgrade versions of SQL for CDS for no reason at all, without realizing that he's playing about on my machine to test that it's working.
Does your CD drive also randomly open on you at random intervals too?
Yeah, that's not, yeah. I'm the unknown beta tester that didn't know what I'm doing. So there you go.
That's awesome.
That's the joke of working together on the same network.
Chris, you mentioned the CD-ROM drive opening up randomly. This is a funny story. It's not related to anything else, but it's my podcast, and so I can do whatever I want to, I guess, with it. So, but there was a story of I think it was on Coding Horror or something, some Daily WTF, not sure which, some website, and they had this server that kept on getting stuck and needed to get restarted. And so what they did is they jimmy rigged a CD-ROM drive with a pencil taped to it that they would open, and they had it set up just right in the server room that would push the power button on the server that needed to get restarted. And so they wrote a little batch script that would ping that server, and if it ever went down, it would open up the CD-ROM drive to try to turn it off and close it. And so this worked happily for whatever weekend that they were having some major issue with, and they needed this quick fix, and then they put the server in the corner of the room and forgot about it, and then someone later on plugged the server and, this needs to get plugged in, and so that booted up and just kept sitting there pinging, and it wasn't connected to the internet, so it kept on pinging and not finding it. It kept on opening up the CD-ROM drive and closing it forever. Just kind of this sad little machine in the corner, continually trying to restart the server that it can't communicate to. So that was
okay. How do we relate this to our technology we're working with now?
We don't. We don't at all.
No. I was hoping for something fun. But actually, I need some tips. You probably have experienced that XrmToolBox crashed, and you have to it doesn't work, so you just delete everything and install it again from scratch and start over. Or do you have any good ideas on how to handle it? I mean, it could be like there are DLLs from tools or from what tools are using. There are someone they're on the wrong version, or something is wrong. Do you just delete everything and reinstall it, or do you have any tips?
It's only happened to me once, I think. And yeah, I just deleted the entire lot and started again. But yeah, that's where having those connection files somewhere different comes in, because you delete everything else and they're still safe. But yeah, does that happen regularly to you?
No, it doesn't. But okay. Probably my friends. But I mean, when you just delete the XrmToolBox, that folder, and you delete that, and unpack another zip file, you still have the tools in this strange folder and so on. So you have to actually go and delete that as well. Or is that what you mean?
Yeah. Yeah.
Okay.
So
So how do you find it? I mean, you can find it from the settings. There's a tab in there where you have the path to where the XrmToolBox is installed and where everything files it's using. But then you can find it. But I mean, if the tool doesn't start, it just crash, then you cannot find that folder. So how do you find it? No, you give the answer now. How do we find them?
So you're saying if you have a tool that you've installed that has completely hosed XrmToolBox in the way that whenever it loads, it causes the XrmToolBox to crash. And so therefore you can't use the path settings option to go find the folder for the tools. How do you go find it?
Yeah.
I've seen XrmToolBox handle that. It'll pop up with a message saying, I tried to load this tool, but I couldn't. But then it carried on with loading everything else, I think. So I can still get the settings.
I think I've seen it both ways.
Mm.
I think I've seen it both ways. But I as a developer of some of my tools, they don't really work very well with the standard. Something's not right with them when I set up the project back in the day, and so they don't work right with the run program script in the actual Visual Studio debug window. And so I always have the plugins folder pinned on my Windows Explorer, so that way I can go find it each time. So that's my shortcut, but that's not a very good one for other people, I'm guessing.
I don't have a good way to use that, but I never remember it or so. But you have to find. So now let's see where it is. Okay, remember this. C $/users/my name / no, it's not. Now it's in OneDrive. I can't say it. Can someone say it? Where are the files by default?
Okay, so my one is C users username AppData roaming MscrmTools XrmToolBox, and then in there you've got settings, plugins, connections, lots of stuff in there.
Yeah. So now I say when you want to get that folder, look down the video here on YouTube or in Spotify or whatever.
Your favorite podcast.
We'll write the folder there, because I mean that's the most common thing that you need when you cannot really find it, because it's a strange area, a strange folder.
Yeah, I'm like Daryl. I'm there all the time. So if I go start run on my machine here, it's the last thing that's in my start run box.
Okay.
Yeah, I mean,
Well,
the main reason that I knew that was that occasionally, when XrmToolBox itself updates, it takes a backup of its older versions. So you can revert to the older version of the platform itself. So there was a release a while back that I think, with our configuration, broke the actual tool itself, and we had to revert back. So that's how I ended up finding that was in there.
But it's another folder. It's not under user blah blah blah. It's under program data.
Oh, is that in there? Okay. Well, there you go.
Yeah. We don't know why. Should get Tanguy here.
Just to explain that.
Maybe it's in its documentation. I don't know. There you go.
Yeah.
All right. So we've gone down the horrible how do you find it in this AppData roaming path thing. Anything else we need to make sure we cover before we call it a day, before we have assumed that we've covered the basics of the actual XrmToolBox?
You don't need to install every plugin. I'm surprised by the amount of people that have every single plugin installed onto their machine. Especially look at the download counts of some things.
Tip. I think another thing when you're talking about installing the tools, and when it opens by default, it opens every time you start XrmToolBox, it will start the tool library. That's annoying. You don't want to do that, but you know how you can set it off. show on XrmToolBox Startup. That is a button, but it doesn't look really like a button, but it is a button. So if you click it once, it will be off. And then you close that window and it will not be shown every time you start XrmToolBox.
Yeah, it's also in the settings. There's a drop down. You can just set it to.
Oh, it's there. So. Yeah.
So I did just notice there's a favorites list in the start page that apparently I never use. I don't have any favorites. How do you pin a favorite? Is that just right click?
That was exactly my question. Are you using that?
All right, yeah, you can right click on the tool and say add to favorites. I've never done that before. Huh.
Yeah.
Maybe I should do that. Maybe I'll do it right now.
I assumed right click wasn't even implemented, so I've just tried. Yeah, okay. You can right click.
There it is.
I didn't know that either. Add with
I think it's useful, but usually I use the recent user tools. That is, then you get the tool with the connection as well.
Yeah. Yep. So that would be something that we'll have to say, hey, can we get a favorites with the recently used? So
you can add to favorites with current connection.
Oh, where's that? That's it. Add to favorites. Oh, okay. So where's that option at? I didn't even.
So I'm right clicking over any tool on my tool list, and I'm getting add to favorites and add to favorites with current connection.
Don't get that.
Nope, I just get add to favorites.
Oh, that's another one. We could get the shortcut.
Yeah,
that you could put on the desktop or something with a tool or with a tool and the connection. Are you using that?
I'm not. I gotta think if I would.
Sorry, Chris. If we don't have video, we can't hear you.
No, I'm saying I've never used that feature. That's look at that. We're just we're finding all the hidden gems as we go along. It's good.
Yeah.
This is probably like hours and hours of Tanguy's life, and he's like, "Even you guys don't even know what this is. Come on."
I'm still working out why I've got an option you've not got. I must be on a later version of the toolbox inadvertently.
Maybe
9.57.
I'm on 5.56.
Yeah, I'm one behind.
Oh, 9.57. There you go. So thanks for Tanguy for putting that in recently.
All right. Good upgrade. All right. Well, now I know what I need to go do. Can you go upgrade my XrmToolBox? So one last call. Any other tools or tips or tricks before we consider this the basics?
One last one on updating, because I know that it annoys me. I just want to get a job done, and it pops up to say, you want to update this tool. I do want to update the tool, but I want to get my job done. So there is a little link in the bottom right of that to say, do it next time, or do it when the tool closes, or something like that. So I can carry on with the version that I'm used to and get what I need to do, but it'll just update itself next time.
Yep, that would be great. I mean, Visual Studio is working like that, so it will update and install the new version when you're closing Visual Studio. So that would be good.
Makes sense.
Yeah, I think I'm all
so
checked out now.
Is there an issue somewhere?
No, that works great for me. But it took me ages to find out that link was there.
The old what is that? Just close it without even reading, sort of thing.
Yeah,
and
exactly.
You could have saved yourself seconds, maybe even a minute.
Literally seconds.
Literally seconds. So, literally. Funny story at the summit, North American Summit. I'm with the group of MVPs. I won't mention who mentioned this stuff, but one of the MVPs mentioned that they were visiting a friend that was in hospice care, and their final wish was to get a JAMA juice or something. That was literally their last wish before they died. And another MVP didn't hear them mention hospice care and said, "Really? Literally?" And they were kind of taking offense to that. And the other one's like, "Yeah, she died 2 days later." And she's like, "Oh." And so you said literally, and that I don't know, that trick, that story, that was a hilarious story to call somebody out with the use of literally. Like, no, really, she died 2 days later. So I won't mention the MVPs that did that, but that's a good story to have. Okay, so I got 3 guests here. So we need to make sure we have time to go around and list how can people get a hold of you if maybe there's a tip that you missed that you think we should have, or maybe there's a tip that you want to have them add some way, shape, or form. How can we get hold of of our guests. Matt, you want to go first? Will Matt, Mark, and Chris?
Twitter is my poison. I think I don't particularly go on to any other ones.
Right.
Twitter.com/MattyBeard. MattyBeard. That's me.
Okay. Good thing you put the URL to Twitter, because that would have been hard.
Just so you know, yeah.
All right, Mark.
Yeah, Twitter for me as well. For reasons lost in the mist of time, I am Mark MPN, prepped everywhere. But yeah, Twitter or anything about my tools, GitHub.
All right. What does the NPM stand for? You just said to say it again.
It's lost in the mist of time. It was I think a handle I could get hold of at the time in, I don't know, signing up for my university account or something.
Yeah. Okay. All right. And then Chris?
LinkedIn's probably my platform of choice these days. So you can get to me at linkedin.com/n/Chris, CHRIS-Piasecki, Piasecki. And occasionally I'll be on the Twitters. I think it's at Chris Piasecki 89.
All right. And then, Jonas, that's how our listeners can get a hold of our guests. How can they get hold of us?
We get too many email and on Twitter. Don't contact. Okay, you do it. Let me try. XrmToolcast at XrmToolBox.com.
Close.
That's the email.
Cast at XrmToolBox.
Ah, damn. Okay, let's go to Twitter. XrmToolcast.
Yeah. All right.
Yeah.
Yep.
Yeah, and then on LinkedIn also, and search for it.
Yep. And even commenting on YouTube is also a good option too, because then everyone else can see your comments. So yeah, all those are great options. So thank you, guests, one and all in one. Jonas, thank you for coming back on and being willing to laugh at yourself and maybe allow us to laugh at you for other things too, to get laugh with you, not at you, laugh with you. That's probably a better way of saying it. So,
or at me.
It was great having you back on the show as a co-host. Love it.
Good to be here.
All right. Well, Matt, thanks for the topic. I've learned things. You would think that I would have thought I'd at least have a basic idea of everything, but no, there's stuff that I learned of this too. So I'm assuming our listeners will learn plenty of things as well. So thank you very much for doing that. And Chris and Mark, thanks for joining the show and putting in your 2 cents as well. Much appreciated.
Thanks a lot.
Thanks for having us.
Yep.
Take care.
See you later. Bye.
See you later.
This has been the XRM Toolcast with Daryl LaBar and Scott Durrell. Produced by Lynn Zawin. If you have any questions or suggestions, please send them to cast@XrmToolbox.com, tweet @XrmToolcast, or hit us up on our LinkedIn Xrm Toolcast page.